Ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed audience, and distinguished guests, a very good evening from New York and Winnipeg, and a very good morning in Bangladesh. First and foremost, on behalf of the Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, I want to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for being here today. It's an honor to stand before such a knowledgeable and passionate audience gathered for the launch of our latest contribution to the field of peace and conflict studies, titled Keeping Peace in a Turbulent World, Reflections from the Field. The audience, this session is being live streamed in our social media channels and IPTV in North America. Before I begin, let me do the treaty recognition. The Institute is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homelands of Red River Métis. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we expect to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. The audience, this book published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing House in the UK represents a collective effort that encapsulates the insights and experiences of those who have tirelessly worked on the front lines of peace building and conflict resolution. It stands as a testament to the intricate challenges and transformative opportunities that define our field. In delving into the challenging geopolitical contexts that shape our contemporary landscape, Keeping Peace in a Turbulent World brings to the light of the significant roles played by nations such as Canada and Bangladesh in the realm of peacekeeping. Canada, renowned for introducing the concept of peacekeeping to the world, and Bangladesh, recognized for carrying forward its legacy with one of the largest contingents of peacekeeping forces, both exemplify the global commitment to sustaining peace. Their contributions highlight the common spirit and dedications to peace that transcends geographical and cultural boundaries. As we dive into our session, let me have the privilege to begin with the words of former Canadian Foreign Minister Lester B. Pearson's persuasive arguments in the UN General Assembly in 1956 that laid the very foundation of peacekeeping operations.
The immediate purpose of the meeting as an assembly tonight is to bring about, as soon as possible, a ceasefire and the withdrawal of forces in the area which we are considering from contact and from conflict with each other. Our longer range purpose, which has already been referred to tonight, and which may ultimately, in its implications, be even more important, is to find solutions for the problems which, because we have left them unsolved over the years, have finally exploded into this fighting and conflict. How can we get from them the support and cooperation which is required, and how can we do this quickly? My Indian colleague has just read to us, on behalf of a number of delegations, a very important resolution which deals with this matter. And in paragraph 2 and 3 of the operative sections of this resolution, certain specific proposals are made with a view to setting up machinery to facilitate compliance with the resolution. I ask myself the question whether that machinery is adequate for the complicated and difficult task which is before us. And for that purpose, Mr. President, my delegation would like to submit to the Assembly a very short resolution, which I venture to read at this time. It is as follows. Bearing in mind the urgent necessity of facilitating compliance with the resolution A3256 of November the 2nd, requests as a matter of priority the Secretary General to submit to it within 48 hours a plan for the setting up, with the consent of the nations concerned, of an emergency international United Nations force to secure and supervise the cessation of hostilities in accordance with the terms of the above resolution. I would assume, Mr. President, that during this short period, the Secretary General would get in touch.
The audience, that is how actually the foundation of peacekeeping was laid in 1956. And I think this is high time for all of us to reflect upon his persuasive arguments when we are embroiled in armed conflict in the East, in the West, in the center. The audience, as Dag Hammarskjöld, the second Secretary General of the United Nations, famously stated that peacekeeping is not a soldier's job, but only a soldier can do it, unquote. This poignant observation underscores the paradoxical nature of peacekeeping efforts, where we do see that soldiers are called upon to act not as warriors, but as guardians of peace. In Keeping Peace in a Turbulent World, our book, we explore how this principle has been actualized through the valiant efforts of peacekeepers from around the globe, including those from Canada and Bangladesh, who have made indelible marks on the international stage. Dear audience, as we navigate the shifting sands of global politics, let this book serve as a crucial resource and inspiration for all of us engaged in the noble pursuit of peace. It is a call to think critically, act compassionately, and work collectively towards a more peaceful and just world. The audience, our plan this evening is to first listen to our chief and special guest, and then we'll dive into listening from the contributors of the book. I have also invited a special guest, Colonel Harun Rashid Chaudhry from Bangladesh, who took part in a different kind of mission, and he's going to enlighten us with his idea and just to showcase the array of missions that Bangladesh has undertaken so far. The audience, it is heartwarming to welcome first Major Retired Delej Khan to speak a few words about our book now. And let me accept the fact and share with you that without his contribution, possibly this book would have not seen the light of publication. Major Delej Khan is a Bangladeshi author and former UN peacekeeper who now works in an NGO. So Delej Khan, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Ahmed. Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Bangladesh. And thank you all for your kind presence today. Allow me to say a few words regarding our book, Keeping Peace in a Turbulent World, Reflection from the Field. Back in 2016, as the operations officer for the Bangladesh Army's Overseas Operations Directorate, I had the privilege of coordinating global peacekeeping operations across 8 countries. During this tenure, I had the opportunity to immerse myself in the stories of our brave peacekeepers whose dedication and sacrifices often go unnoticed. It was during this time that the idea of collecting and sharing these remarkable stories with a wider audience took root in my heart. Sorry. In 2018, the book Peacekeepers was born in Bengali, encapsulating the true essence of our peacekeepers' experience. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a much greater endeavor. Last year, once I joined CRRIC as a researcher, Professor Kausar Ahmed noticed my work and approached me with a proposition. He envisioned transforming peacekeepers into an international publication, a testament to the courage and resilience of Bangladeshi peacekeepers, but also a tribute to all UN peacekeepers worldwide. And so, with the dedicated effort of Mr. Niaz as a translator and the individual contribution of former UN peacekeeper force commanders and scholars, the manuscript for Keeping Peace in a Turbulent World was meticulously crafted. Today, as I stand here, I am filled with an overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude. The publication of this book marks the realization of a dream to share the stories of our peacekeepers with a global audience, to inspire future generations, and to shed light on the challenges faced by those who selflessly serve in the pursuit of peace. Keeping Peace in a Turbulent World is divided into three parts. Part 1 encompasses the true stories of UN peacekeepers. Part 2 features reflection from UN force commanders. And Part 3 presents analysis from researchers, scholars, and officials of UN Department of Peacekeeping Operations. It is more than just a book. It is a testament to the human spirit, to resilience in the face of adversity, and to the unwavering commitment to peace. Through the 33 poignant narratives contained within its pages, readers will gain a deeper understanding of the complexities and realities faced by the peacekeepers around the world. I would be remiss if I did not express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency Bob Rae for gracing us with his presence today. Your support and encouragement mean the world to us. As we celebrate this milestone, I am reminded of the challenges that lie ahead. Despite their expertise in the protection of civilians, often called as POC, during multidimensional UN missions, former peacekeepers often find themselves without a platform to share their invaluable skills and experiences. It surprises me today, UN peacekeepers being experts in protection of civilians during multinational UN missions are hardly recognized and employed as protection experts in UN agencies or in other international or local NGOs. Unfortunately, there is no global platform for former peacekeepers to utilize their skills and experience. And I would request His Excellency Bob Rae to guide us in this regard. I'm sure under his able leadership and guidance, thousands of former UN peacekeepers will find a platform to contribute to some of the most troublesome spots in the world and promote peace better in light of their tested skills and experience. In conclusion, I extend my heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for your unwavering support and encouragement. Together, let us continue to strive for a world where peace reigns supreme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Major Dalal H. Khan. I think Honorable Bob Rae has noticed your points and will definitely bring it to his notice in a more suitable manner. The audience, let me welcome our chief guest. But before I do so, another round of gratitude goes to my former institution and organization, Bangladesh Army, who has contributed immensely towards this book. We have had direct cooperation with the Director of Overseas Operations Directorate and the General Staff Officer 1, and both of these officers, they are very fine officers, and they have directly helped me actually to collect more data on Bangladesh's contribution to the Army. And over and above, I also express my deepest gratitude to the Chief of Army Staff, Bangladesh Army, General Shafi, for writing the foreword of this book. And we do take pride in being a former member of this finest institution in the world. The audience, without further ado, let me now welcome our ambassador to the United Nations, Honorable Bob Rae, who doesn't need an introduction per se. Yet I would like to mention that he has a deep connection with Bangladesh, as he traveled numerous times to Bangladesh as the special envoy of our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2018 and onward, to cover and to support Rohingya crisis. He also directed the report which came out outlining various aspects of the Rohingya crisis, and it is titled "Tell Them We Are Human," unquote. So here is Honorable Bob Ray. Sir, floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for letting me say a few words and for being able to join this seminar. What can I say, today and tonight, as we reach across the airwaves to Bangladesh. Many people I would like to salute. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to all of those involved in this, I think, extremely important project. And listening carefully to the comments so far, it allows me to pay tribute to the people of Bangladesh and to the government and the military of Bangladesh, who played such an important role in expanding the reality and really building on the vision that Mr. Pearson had, and that had its challenges in its day. And I think we can all see how peacekeeping has evolved and the challenges that it's faced over the last 60 years. But I think we also have to understand that the future of peace building, peacekeeping, conflict prevention is going to be very rich. Unfortunately, as we speak today, we have close to 50 armed conflicts in the world going on right now as we speak. It's an extraordinary situation where we have gone from a period of relative calm and peace to a world where we are really involved in a series of very, very difficult and violent and costly conflicts, in many cases involving millions of civilians, and in which tens of thousands of people are losing their life. Let me just take a step back, if I may, without going on for too long. But I do want to make a couple of points. The first is that Mr. Pearson was very much a member of a generation that had known war. He emerged as a young flight officer from serving in the military in the First World War. Recent book has emerged, has just been published, called The Duel, which is the story of Mr. Pearson's rivalry with his contemporary John Diefenbaker, who also became Prime Minister of Canada. And the irony, one of the ironies that the author points out in this book is that neither Mr. Pearson nor Mr. Diefenbaker, although they were both soldiers, actually saw conflict, saw battle. Despite that fact, Mr. Pearson's experience in the Second World War, where he served in London during the Blitz, gave him a particular understanding of the level of destruction that was associated with a conflict which, as it was waged by the Nazis at the time, brought civilians directly into the middle of the conflict and made it a war in which, as we know, millions of civilians lost their lives in the course of what was an incredibly destructive conflict. So by the time Mr. Pearson became the Foreign Minister of Canada, he had attended the San Francisco conference. He'd been involved in the drafting of the charter. He had a clear sense of what it was that the victorious nations of the Second World War were trying to create, but he also knew its limitations and its challenges. So there are a couple of interesting things about Mr. Pearson's speech, which we've just seen. The first is that it was a speech to the General Assembly, not to the Security Council. It was really his vision that led to a role for the Assembly in establishing the peacekeeping mission, which he intensely believed in. The second was the nature of the conflict to which he was speaking, which of course is well known to all of us. It was the conflict involving the Suez Canal, where troops from Israel, France, and the United Kingdom joined in combat in around the Suez Canal and attempted to take the canal, met by resistance from Egyptian army and other armies, and where it was clear that this, in a sense, was the last gasp of empire. What in fact made a peacekeeping mission possible was the fact that two of the superpowers were members of the Security Council, members of what we call the P5, that is to say the United States and the Soviet Union, were very much opposed to the imperial adventure, which the British and the French, with the support of the Israelis, had decided to engage in. And it was precisely because of this extraordinary time when you had the Russians invading, Soviet Union invading Hungary, where countries were not able to respond because of fear that it would get us into an even deeper global conflict. Both the Soviet Union and the United States agreed that we needed to do something about the conflict in the Middle East. And Mr. Pearson played a unique role because he knew the British well. He'd served, as I said, as a diplomat in the United Kingdom. He was personally very friendly with many of the officials who were in charge of the British government at the time. He also knew very well the officials in the United States. He was very familiar with them because of his long diplomatic career. And he was able to use the fulcrum, if you like, of the United Nations as the place in which to try to bring countries together in behalf of a common vision, which reflected both the strength, I would argue, the strength, and also the vulnerabilities of peacekeeping. Let us not forget that the peacekeeping mission, which followed the ceasefire in Suez, was intended to keep a peace, which was marked by nations which had agreed that that's what needed to happen and pulled back from the conflict. But the peacekeepers, in a sense, were there on Egyptian soil with the approval and the support of the government of Egypt. A little side story for Canadians is that while Mr. Pearson was the author of the idea, created the resolution, and was able to persuade others, including Doug Hummersholt, the Secretary General at the time, this is what needed to be done. In fact, Mr. Pearson was not able to convince the Egyptians that the Canadians should be part of the infantry that would be doing the protecting and patrolling, for a simple reason. At that time, Canada's flag, the red ensign, as it was known, had a Union Jack in the corner. And Nasser took great exception to having troops with that label, or that brand, as we would now say, on their hats and on their epaulettes. So the Canadians played a role in logistics, and they played a role in trying to create a sort of a logistical base for it, but it was very much behind the scenes. Many other countries contributed to the peacekeeping force at the time. Another interesting sidebar is it was this incident with respect to the red ensign that made Mr. Pearson decide there and then that Canada needed its own flag. And we had to wait until Mr. Pearson became the Prime Minister before he was able to realize his dream of Canada having its own flag, because that was part of the concept that he had of our country, that we needed to become not simply a product of empire or a reflection of great power politics, but we needed to play another role in which, as a sovereign nation among nations, we'd be able to take our part. The fact that the peacekeeping force needed to have the acceptance of the Egyptians meant that in 1967, when General Nasser decided that he was going to disinvite the peacekeepers from being there, and in fact was going to, then that was in a sense the beginning of the realization that another conflict was brewing between Israel and all of its neighbors, leading to the 1967 war. I think was a sign to the world that it's important to understand that peacekeepers are not an army of a sovereign state. And although many secretaries general have aspired to having a standing army of the United Nations that could be put into battle quickly in order to resolve conflict, something I think that has its merits as an idea, as a concept that we need to look at as we look at the future of peacekeeping and of peacemaking. But the fact that the troops had to be withdrawn at the most difficult time, because in effect there would be no peace to keep for a time, so let's get the peacekeepers out of the way, was I think a reflection of the vulnerability of peacekeeping, and we've seen that very recently, where a number of countries have asked for Mali and the Democratic Republic of the Congo have both indicated. Mali has not only indicated, but we've seen troops withdraw from Mali, even though arguably there's a point to having them there. But the government of Mali said, we don't want you anymore. And the Democratic Republic of the Congo, it looks like it's going to be saying the same thing with respect to the large peacekeeping forces that have played such a strong role in Africa and elsewhere. All of which brings us, I think, to the critical question is, what is the future exactly of peacekeeping as we reflect on the past? What does it look like? And the Secretary General has given us his ideas, looking at what he calls the new agenda for peace. And I think there is an agenda that we still need to look long and hard at. One of them is, how do we increase the role of mediation and the role of conflict prevention? How do we look more at using these techniques to try and reduce the impact of potential conflict? How do we identify conflict before it actually gets into the center of things? That's something that the relatively newly formed, 15 years old now, the Peace Building Commission is supposed to be looking at. But I would detect a little bit of rivalry or jealousy from the Security Council, saying, well, wait a minute, the Charter gives us jurisdiction over issues of peace and security. Why do we have a peace building commission that goes outside our mandate? And the reason is quite simple. The reason is because we need something that's quicker. We need something that's more nimble. And frankly, we need something that avoids the vetoes and the logjams that have become such a feature of the Security Council. If we don't show more nimbleness and more creativity in how we use the peace building and conflict reduction mechanisms, we won't be able to take advantage of the possibilities that are there. The last point I would make is perhaps just a personal one, and that is that, ironically, there are a couple of ironies. One of them is that my father was Mr. Pearson's chief of staff and executive assistant, not in 56, but in 53, when Mr. Pearson became the president of the General Assembly. And the second is that my dad was the ambassador to the United Nations in 1973, which was the dates of the Yom Kippur War, which up until the recent fighting starting in October 7th, 2023, was the most serious conflict in the Middle East over that period of time. The final terrible irony is that some of the conflicts which preoccupied the United Nations in 1945, two of them in particular, Kashmir and Palestine, as it was called, the question of Palestine, the question of Kashmir, as it was referred to in the early days of the United Nations in 1945. Ironically, arguably, those two issues are before us, although some would deny it. It's quite a sensitive topic. but I think we can still see that there are zones of conflict which have been with us for a long time and which we need to understand better as we go forward. Finally, I do want to say something about the legacy of peacekeeping and how do we build on the experience of peacekeeping and how do we integrate it into the work of the United Nations? The question that was posed earlier, and I think it's a very important one. My explanation for why we have not done a good enough job of really maintaining the legacy and history of peacekeeping and also drawing on the experience, the lessons to be learned and applied from the experience of peacekeepers is because peacekeepers don't work for the United Nations. They work for national governments. We don't have a United Nations legacy capacity, which we need to have, but we don't have it, that really draws on the history of the soldiers who have given to conflict. And our national governments don't always do a great job of pulling this together. I know in the case of Canada, there's a continuing struggle to give peacekeeping the same level of profile of Canadians involved in the work of the United Nations as do soldiers who are involved in other conflicts in other places, whether it's obviously World War II, but more recently Korea, the battle, most recently the battles that were fought in Afghanistan, where the military keeps a very good record of what its soldiers do and attempts to draw lessons. But we don't have enough of a collective capacity to draw the lessons to be learned from the interventions that have been made. I don't think that's good enough. I want to be very clear that I think one of the most important things that we need to do in life is understand how do we learn from the past? How do we learn from our collective past? And how do we draw lessons from the experiences that many of our soldiers have had and that many people have shown and have done, but they've not found a place or a way in which we can pull this information together. I think that this is a very important project that's been mentioned, and I will take it on. I do think it's important for us to find ways of giving more time and attention and respect to those who have fought, to those who have died, to those who have been injured, and to all those who've been engaged in trying to establish peace where there is conflict. And we simply can't do the job we have to do unless we have the ability to learn from this collective experience. So I want to express my appreciation to all of you, to the authors of this study, and I look forward to hearing some comments tonight about what has gone into the book. I look forward to seeing the book and to getting a chance to read it, and certainly want to congratulate my friends in Winnipeg and my friends in Bangladesh for joining us all in this conversation. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I can stay up a little longer without falling asleep, so I'll stay and listen for a while. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. It was such an enlightening, and I was just remembering that I do teach a course titled Canada in World Affairs in University of Winnipeg, but I have never known these two interesting facts that, sir, you shared with us today. And I'm going to include those two facts, especially with regards to the book that you mentioned, where the issues of 1950s were nicely brought out. However, sir, I do, I might approach to you personally to understand the irony that you have mentioned 3 of those tonight, because I do see a legacy of your family waging peace from Canada worldwide. So these remains to be explored, sir, in the next session or personally. Thank you once again for being with us. And on a side note, sir, I have dispatched a book to your office. I'm in touch with Sarah, so it will reach you within a couple of days, hopefully, sir. Thank you so much.
That's very generous of it. It would take a bit of my pension in order to be able to buy the book.
That is absolutely understandable, sir. And we do appreciate, sir, because the publisher is from UK. So they have actually put a price in GBP, and which is a little difficult for all of us here. But nonetheless, thank you so much for sharing all those small details about your vision. And you are right, sitting in the United Nations headquarters in the midst of so much of discussions and dialogues. And that is really fascinating, I think. And we would love to hear more in the future about the future of peacekeeping operations. As you rightly mentioned, that we are actually in the juncture of a very complicated historical time where the conflicts between states and non-states in one side happening, and how really we do see UN to be an effective platform of conflict resolution. Thank you once again, sir, and deep gratitude. Dear audience, thank you, sir. The audience will go into the next part, where we have invited our esteemed contributors and speakers from Bangladesh and Winnipeg. Mr. Omori is also in Winnipeg, but the rest we'll hear. But before I do so, as promised, let's just quickly have a view of Bangladesh's contribution to the United Nations. And I promise it will be a very short video clip. And here you are.
Bangladesh, in United Nations peacekeeping operations, has an ethical reference of leading for 33 years. Presently, Bangladesh is the leading troops contributing country in the world. This is a hard-earned legacy of commitment displayed by Bangladeshi peacekeepers in the service of global peace. Bangladesh Army got the opportunity to serve under the Blue Helmets in 1988. A 15-member military observers team was sent during the Iran-Iraq War. Subsequently, Bangladesh Police in 1989, Bangladesh Navy and Bangladesh Air Force in 1993 joined UN peacekeeping operations. Since then, our peacekeepers have participated in 55 UN missions in 40 countries. Amid increasingly complex crisis scenario, peacekeeping has become ever more challenging. Almost all the peacekeeping missions are now conducted under Chapter 7. Moreover, the global pandemic of COVID-19 has raised a new concern, a new enemy to fight. Our peacekeepers are involved in various mandated tasks, like protection of civilians, rebuilding of national infrastructure, and securing main supply routes. At present, 15 army contingents are deployed in 8 missions to cope with the requirements of modern peacekeeping. Mine-protected vehicles and tactical unmanned aerial vehicles are deployed in various missions. Bangladesh Navy is proud to be the only member among South Asian countries to deploy VN ships in the Mediterranean Sea as a multinational maritime task force under United Nations interim force in Lebanon. Another marine contingent is deployed in South Sudan. With 1 C-130 military transport aircraft and 9 MI series helicopters, Bangladesh Air Force's peacekeepers are deployed with 5 contingents in 6 different countries. With the commitment of maintaining law and order in the disputed countries, 501 Bangladesh police peacekeepers are currently deployed in 5 countries. Bangladesh is the first member state to respond to newly introduced UN Peacekeeping Capability Readiness System, PCRS. So far, Bangladesh Army has deployed 5 contingents following PCRS. An aeromedical evacuation team is the last contingent that deployed in DR Congo in February 2021.
The Bangladesh troops here in Moscow have displayed high standards of professionalism.
The audience, having seen a very brief presentation on Bangladesh Army's contribution to world peace, let's tune in to our next guest. I have invited Lieutenant Colonel retired Harun Rashid Chaudhry, and who is one of the pioneers of Bangladesh Army. And he was commissioned in the first batch of officers in the newly independent Bangladesh. And he retired from active service in 2003, and he did his master's in business administration from Preston University, United States of America. During his military service, Colonel Chowdhury served as the chief of contingent in Kuwait Army on deputation from 1993 to 95, overseeing 4,000 skilled personnel and successfully establishing the logistics arm of the war-torn Kuwait Armed Forces, focusing on catering and technical support. Later, he held the position of executive director at Senakollan Songstha, a notable welfare organization in Bangladesh. Beyond his corporate and military role, Colonel Chowdhury showcased his artistic side as a sculptor. He held solo art exhibitions at the Bangladesh Shilpakala Academy, participated in Asian art exhibition, and displayed his work in San Francisco, USA. And the audience, what a privilege to welcome Colonel Chowdhury today and this evening, actually, and to listen his extraordinary contribution towards a very different UN mission. And when Mr. Chowdhury jumps in, let me tell you, the audience, we are waiting the first female force commander, Brigadier General retired Nazma, to join. She just responded to military hospital to attend a patient of hers who has been in a critical situation. So this is, and we are going to wait for her maybe at the end if she could join. So without further ado, let's hear from Colonel Chowdhury. Sir, go ahead, floor is yours. If you unmute, sir. Yeah. So if you can unmute, sir, kindly. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me all? Yes. Professor Kausar Ahmed, thank you very much for inviting me in this webinar, especially when it is among these great people of prominence around me. The book, Keeping Peace in Turbulent World, is a 524-page book with stories collected from 33 United Nations veterans, weaving narratives in seamless sequences, reads like a novel based on true events. We can very well call it an historical account in the form of a prose. Well, until now, Bangladesh has successfully completed about 63 peacekeeping missions in 40 countries with about 167,000 peacekeepers. And many would wonder what actually made us so successful in the United Nations mission. My understanding is Bangladeshi officers and soldiers on very landing at the mission site assume the role of protecting people, which is the mandate. They're protecting the civilians, basically. You might question how this mandate prevailed in each and every individual participant of the Bangladeshi peacekeepers. I guess among several others, the most important I can mention is the classic power of adaptability. And with this backdrop, I would like to focus on this power of adaptability. My foreign mission was different from the UN mission. It was a deputation, as I was really told by Professor Kausar, that in the Kuwait Armed Forces, I was the chief of contingent of a large group of people in the logistics, about 4,000. My little experience is a classical example of that adaptability, which I'm going to explain. Today, I will try to explain just by an example from my experiences in Kuwait mission. Although, we went as skilled personnel for catering and technical, on the catering side, we didn't have the required skill to cater the Kuwait Armed Forces, because our chefs and cooks were skilled in cooking, but they used traditional burners and pans back in Bangladesh. But the kitchens in Kuwait Armed Forces were 5-star hotel standards, having sophisticated machines. Again, the food was completely different from ours, and we got into challenge. We found the Kuwaiti authority getting disappointed on our ability to perform. At this moment, I was wondering how I could solve this problem. And I was thinking that if I could get my soldiers trained somewhere in Kuwait. So one day I went to meet the president of Kuwait University, who is actually the chancellor, and sought help from him. And he said that university don't have any catering and training curricula. And I told him that you have 17 kitchens and restaurants to support 20,000 students. Now it is 40,000 students. Is it possible that my staff could receive on-the-job training in your institution? He said, Muqaddam, I mean, Lieutenant Colonel in Arabic, let me call the Director General of the Food and Beverage. Over a long discourse, the Director General agreed to support us, but asked for an expenses that would be involved in the training. I assured them that the expenses would be met without knowing how. Next day, I went and met General Fadel Amir, the Deputy Chief of Staff of Kuwait Armed Forces, and told him about my discourse with the president of Kuwait University. And I said that they are ready to train our soldiers, provided we have the expenses involved. The general was extremely excited, and he said, please tell them that we'll pay any amount of money required to train the Bangladeshi soldiers from here. And they paid $6 million for first group of 600 soldiers being trained up there. Interestingly, once they were deployed, in no time our soldiers picked up the cooking and services. The university authority was so happy. Surprisingly, they allowed our soldiers to work in 7 female student kitchens in the restaurant. That never happened in the history of Kuwait. And this is what was our success, because our soldiers adapted to the environment. They adapted to the situation. They adapted to the need of the mission. And this is the success that made this mission to go for last 33 years. Likewise, I believe our soldiers and officers going to the United Nations missions immediately adapt to the environment. They adapt to the situation, the need of the mission. And that is what helps us to make the success in an unknown and a new environment. But this is what I want to talk about, my part, just a little experience, with an example.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Colonel Chaudhry. And I'm a big fan of his storytelling. He has a brilliant technique of telling us, actual events in a format of story. Thank you, sir, for sharing your stories with us. The audience now, let's welcome.
So you just wanted, if I don't, you just wanted that if I would say something about this geopolitical context of.
Please go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Right. If we talk about the geopolitical context of the United Nations peacekeeping deployments, I would like to make my personal opinion. If you look at the deployment of the UN peacekeeping in the globe, you will see that the concentration of the UN peacekeepers are limited to areas in Central Africa and West Africa, which is the main hub. The second hub is the Middle East, encompassing Yemen, of course, and few more are spread in Haiti, in Colombia, in Myanmar, and some in Central Asia. It means about 80% of the UN troops, our peacekeepers, are deployed in Africa and Middle East. The UN peacekeeping is not widespread around the rest of the world, although the conflicts persist in other places globally. The current geographical distribution of the UN peacekeeping operations clearly identifies a pattern of concentration, a pattern of conflicts which is taking place, which is in the 2 places I mentioned. But each have their own reasons. With the potential of peace in Israel and Palestine, I guess the United Nations peacekeeping role will largely reduce in the Middle East over the next 5 to 10 years. On the other hand, with the evolving situation in Myanmar, I believe there will be an increased engagement of United Nations peacekeeping in the near future. The changing geopolitical scenario now is marked by conflicts of interest involving major powers such as the Russia-Ukraine war, China-Taiwan conflict, the issues around the North Korea that poses complex challenges, or even Iran and the US. The complexity arises from the requirement of a resolution, which is a prerequisite for any UN peacekeeping involvement from both the Security Council and the General Assembly. For example, if a veto power member nation is implicated, reaching as a resolution in favor of an UN effort, then it greatly diminishes. Therefore, we may say that the UN peacekeeping involvement shall persist for small conflict intervention, not the greater ones. On the whole, I believe the United Nations peacekeeping deployment will remain between 7,000 to 10,000 max in the coming future, if it operates under the same model, and will also largely remain limited to the regions they are employed, with the exceptions I have already mentioned, I mean, Middle East and Myanmar. In fact, I believe there is a need for remodeling the United Nations peacekeeping support with the aim of being able to intervene in the larger conflicts in addition to smaller ones. And I think Excellency Bob Ray also gave such kind of hints in his speech. Then only the world may be able to see peace in the truest sense of the term. That's what it's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Chaudhary. I think it's such a brilliant observations with regards to the concentration of most of the missions. And I do agree with you, Colonel Chaudhary, that the future of peacekeeping missions should be reviewed and revisited, especially the current model, and whether these would be going to be effective when we do see interstate conflicts at such a large scale, such as Ukraine and Russian war. And of course, the conflict persists in rest of the part of the world. The audience, let me have the privilege now to welcome Dr. Niloy from Bangladesh, Dhaka University. And I'm going to briefly introduce him before I let him speak. And here is his short bio. So Dr. Niloy Ranjan Biswas is the professor at the Department of International Relations, as I said, University in Dhaka. He has undertaken his studies at the University of Dhaka, George Washington University, Washington, D.C., and University of London. Dr. Biswas has several academic and policy publications to his credit. He has co-authored his first book on Rohingyas and Violence Protection Dialectic, jointly published by the University of Dhaka and University College London. Co-edited 4 books and authored 35 journal articles and book chapters. He has written extensively on de-radicalization and preventing violent extremism, refugees and forced migration, security governance reform, and South Asian regional contribution to UN peace support endeavors. And on the academic relevance of the book in the broader disciplines of IR and peace and conflict studies. And I do wonder what a brilliant coincidence to have met Dr. Niloy on this purpose, because we do have very common backgrounds with regards to our research. So without further ado, Dr. Niloy, the floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Professor Kausa Ahmed. Thank you. And congratulations to both the editors, Professor Kausa Ahmed and Delroy Khan. I fondly tell him, Delor Bhai, we know each other for quite a bit of years as well. And we met, I think, in Bipsot due to a training, I think, in 2018. And peacekeeping is an area which I think is very close to my heart as a civilian, as an academia. I've been working on peacekeeping since I went for my second master's at the George Washington University. Professor Paul D. Williams was my direct professor at the Security Policy Studies, who authored quite a few books and articles on peacekeeping issues, and it literally kind of inspired me to work on Bangladesh's peacekeeping issues and broadly South Asian contributions and nature. And there are very few academia, civilians, who took the interest at that point of time. I'm talking about 2018 and 19, and we, during 2012, 13, we literally did not have scholarly articles, book-length works on the issues of Global South contribution. I think the first book, which was co-authored by Professor Paul D. Williams and Alex Bellamy from Australia, on the contributions and the different facets of contributions in even peacekeeping operations, and highlighting the role of the Global South. Now, we can understand Global South is a contested term. There are diversities, there are issues over there, and there are convergences and divergences. So keeping all that in mind, I think this particular book, Keeping Peace in the Turbulent World, Reflections from the Field, will fill the lacuna in the academic and the policy world in various ways. So I would identify three particular ways. First, the significance of the convergence between the empirical and conceptual ideas of peacekeeping and peace building. Like, we have very few books, even in the global context, which basically merges the understanding of the first-hand narratives coming from the peacekeepers. At the same volume, you have the articles which is more analytically authored and discusses the challenges that is faced in the global level at the institutions like United Nations, and at the same time the contributors who have been taking keen interest in contributing the robust and multidimensional operations. Nevertheless, because of the changes in the nature of the conflict, I think it also requires continuous reforms in the peacekeeping operations. So that as a researcher, as a practitioner, I think it's important to look back and also to delve more deeper into these ideas. Now, as a student, I still consider myself as a student of broadly IR and peace and conflict studies. I think this book will contribute significantly for the students of postgraduate or even at the undergraduate level, because I teach, peace and conflict. I teach peacekeeping and peace building in my department. Also, often Bangladesh University of Professional, another public university, request me to teach the similar kind of courses at their master's level, the Peace and Conflict Studies department. And I see these book will be a significant textbook for both getting the empirical dimension of the narratives, as I said, and at the same time, how some of the analytical issues will fit in to understand the different generations of peacekeeping. I think the sequence of the chapters are so important and so critical here, which is, for example, the stories of the peacekeepers, the force commanders' direct reflections, and I myself had the opportunity to read. And I think these are something which we often miss when we give examples. For example, as a professor in the class, when I have to give examples, I have to, I had vivid experiences of doing interviews of the Bangladeshi first generation peacekeepers and then second generation and third generation peacekeepers. So these helps a lot for the readers and also the students to understand this. Now, my second point is basically what are the analytical issues? I think the book has covered most of the critical analytical issues that the contemporary, peacekeeping enthusiasts, both from the professional and also from the academic arena, should definitely look into. For example, women, peace and security issue. I think this is very significant, and it has also, discussed in if I remember, if I'm not mistaken, from the narratives of Brigadier General Nazma, which we kind of we cherish that experience that our first contingent commander, who is a lady officer, has long experience in Bangladesh Army. We give examples of her. Now, when she is writing about the significance of women, peace and security, the role of women in a conflict situation, and has been substantially corroborated by the other scholars in different chapters, I think this adds significant academic value and policy value to any readers from different quarters of the world. The another chapter which I think is very important is that peacekeeping in the humanitarian ground. So I think one of the co-editors have authored this, which is very significant because both the nature of the conflict has changed, that we all understand and acknowledge. We talk about urban warfare, we talk about conflict grounds where humanitarian issues are very significant, and sometimes they do not go each other. So the challenging issues of protecting humanitarian issues and solving humanitarian issues at the same time. When we are talking about chapter 7, the significance and Mali example is in front of us, so it provides us the dilemma. At the same time, for an academic, it creates a lot of research question for the future research that I think that the book has highlighted quite significantly. And the last one for me is, which I think that, what is the, training purpose? I think there are one or two very important chapters on the future training
training that is required in a very turbulent one that is coming forward. We are kind of like experiencing that the troop heavy peacekeeping might not be the future, and there are different kind of missions. If you look at how the recent Haiti mission has been approved by the UN Security Council, a police mission led by Kenya. So all this are suggesting or kind of raising some question that what will be the future, and then what will be the role of the peacekeeping contributing countries, UN Security Council. So there are different kind of options that we need to study. We need to do further research. So the major success that I'd like to say that it has raised some very pertinent questions, which is the task of an academic book always, and the researchers, and most importantly, it has brought together the academicians and practitioners, which is a very rare case in the contemporary world. So I congratulate again, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. So I'll be here till 9:55 a.m. to Bangladesh. I have to attend a class at 10 a.m. So kindly excuse me, but I am really grateful for this opportunity to give me the opportunity to say a few words. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Niloy Ranjan. It was such a pleasure having following your works, because you are an academic and you do teach such courses. So you have nicely woven the idea of narrative and our own academic, references and citations that we often overburden people to study, and purchase our books. Thank you so much for your insightful works. And we are very happy to see Brigadier General Nazma Begum, retired, has joined. And let me welcome first.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let me very briefly tell about Brigadier General retired Nazma Begum, the first female force commander, and she actually commanded twice United Nations missions, and she has written.
First contingent commander.
Absolutely.
First female contingent commander.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And she is a prolific writer, authored 74 books. Wow, it's a whopping number, and it's excellent. And she also has contributed immensely in Bangladesh military as the first commander in the field ambulances. And so let me, without spending much time, allow her to share her experience, and especially the chapter that she wrote. So Brigadier General Nazma Begum, please go forward. Floor is yours, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thanks to you all. Good day, and I welcome to you all to my today's chapter. Actually, it's a chapter from my book. I've written nearly about not nearly 4 books on peacekeeping and peace building missions in of United Nations. This is one of the chapter from one of the book. And the female peacekeepers, how they widening the angular vision of United Nations. Female peacekeepers, they are an added value for the United Nations, because they can observe everything from separate angular vision. They have that power. It is widening the angular vision of United Nations, and also they have some extra human quality. Not that they can only see, but also whatever see and hear, whatever the men tell, but they have the power to hear everything what the men cannot or do not say at all. And I'm the first female contingent commander from the military of a medical unit. This is the first time for United Nations that I have commanded twice a unit, and also twice was the country senior. This is the first time, and till now, I am the one. Only one of the female peacekeepers commander that who has commanded twice, and twice was the country senior. The female peacekeepers, females, who are the mother of the world, the queen of every sweet home. They can anything which are challenging, not a challenge for at all. In my contingent, which maximum of my officers are female, we have proved very successfully that we can overcome very smoothly any challenge. We have proved that the female peacekeepers, they can play the same role like their male counterpart. Not only that, even they have some extra they can reach some added some extra value because they have some extra human qualities by which they can reach beyond man's age, beyond man's age. They can the local population, especially the women and the children and even the men, they feel free, more free to talk to women peacekeepers because even the rebels also they can also feel very free to talk to women peacekeepers. In some locality of the Middle African country, the women cannot say or they don't have any say. In that region, the women peacekeepers they play a role model for the women. And in my chapter, actually, it's not a story. It's the everyday's day-to-day routine of our activities. Because in Ivory Coast, at the time of withdraw the mission, we were alone in a remote district of the Ivory Coast. No fighting force were there. It was so challenging because each and every time, at that time, the rebels they started crossing the border and they are involved in so many terrorism, many attacks like suicidal attack and everything. But even though we are alone, we ourselves provided the safety and security for the others. Apart from our medical ground or medical treatment, we provided safety and security for the locals, for the United Nations, and also for the ourselves. And we have proved that we, apart from our duty as a doctor, we can manage everything so smoothly, so smoothly. It's a added value, of course, for the United Nations, for our country, for the military, and surely for the women, because the it was even my colleagues, my male counterparts. They used to talk every time that it is so challenging, even for a male commander. But you have managed everything so smoothly, and each and every day we were under threat of attack. Even in my chapter, I have written it briefly that even we are under the suicidal attack, under the threat, but it was managed, everything was managed so smoothly. And even we have treated nearly about 4,000 uh, patients. We are there for a 6 months duration, but outdoor patients 4,000, and there are nearly about 400 life-saving operation without any cost. Cost is totally from our side, from Bangladesh, and from our medical unit of the military contingent. And I like to uh, I like to conclude my own writer that women are the mother of the world. They are the queen of every sweet home. They can manage everything. They can command and control, and very smoothly, even like their male counterpart, and sometimes more than that. So women are that kind of human being, not less, but more than man being. Thanks to you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for your wonderful remarks. And it is indeed the contribution of females in UN peacekeeping operations that make difference in many, many places that we have not only heard, we have testimonies of many of the authors in this book, particularly with regards to some of the hot zones in the world. The audience, let me now welcome Firoz Al-Muzahid Khan, who is an additional Deputy Inspector General of Bangladesh Police. He served the UN peacekeeping missions in Bosnia, Liberia, Sudan, South Sudan, both as UN police and UN international staff. He published a book, a travelogue based on UN missions experience. This February, he has published another edition in the book fair. That's what he shared with us. And he was a part-time teacher of one of the universities in Bangladesh. And he has also written how cultural shock affects peacekeepers' mind and police officers' challenges in the peacekeeping missions. So, without further ado, Mr. Feroz, floor is yours, sir. You can go ahead and unmute the mic, sir, if you can. I suppose we have Mr. Feroz. Can you hear us? Let's give him a couple of seconds, and then we might invite Mr. Omar to go ahead. And if Feroz is back, then we'll invite him to the discussion again. Oh, okay. Now he's back. Okay, Mr. Feroz, unmute your mic and you can go ahead. Feroz, unmute your mic, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Distinguished speakers, excellencies, and respected audience, very good morning once again. I'm very happy to be here to speak few words on the occasion of launching the book, great book, I should say. Probably I'm the only police officers here in this book who has contributed a little. Thanks to the Cambridge Scholars Publishing, particularly, to publish this book. This is a great book. This brought out the insights of the true stories from the field, which is very important. Untold, unknown stories were unearthed to the world, and it will reach out to the major readers all over the world, probably through this Cambridge Scholars Publishing. It's a great news for us all. I also thank to Professor Kausar and Major Delis Khan for their special efforts to publish it. Finally, it has come to a real book in the world. As Professor already has said regarding myself, that I worked in many missions for nearly 6 years in Bosnia, in Liberia, in Sudan, and also in South Sudan. I was also in Kosovo for a brief period, only 1 month. I didn't mention that. As a police officer, we have faced many challenges. Not only myself, not only Bangladesh police, I think it was also true for other police officers from other world. There are many faults. So the first one I'll talk about is readiness being done by the police contributing countries are not enough. The realistic and mission-specific training is needed for the police officers to make even more effective. And to address that, how can I address that? It's my opinion that even veterans, after the even 10 years, they remain, they left unattended. They gathered experience, competency, and capacity, but they are not being utilized. There could be a forum where there could be a pool of those experts who already have gathered quite good knowledge, and through screening process, they could be utilized for the future missions. That's what my idea about the, utilizing the veterans, UN veterans. And this book, brings back those UN veterans to talk about their stories. It's not their own stories. It is actually inside. They felt, they have seen while they were working with that. They were mixing up with the community fabric and learn many things as well. They tried to contribute from their side. So they can be utilized, even could be benefited out of it. Regarding my story, small contribution. This was published in a book before. And this, I'm happy to let you know that during this book fair in Bangladesh, February, Language Month, the edition is going to be published. It is already published. It is in the market from Chitra Prakashani, and one story from that book I have contributed to this book, Sergeant Marvin. We work together, and peacekeepers around the world, we work together in a very diversified environment. It's like rainbow colored environment where uh, we all have problems. We all have problems left from the home, but still we are so much dedicated to get a good result, to restore peace and tranquility for the country, for the host country. We are trying. Sergeant Marvin was one of them who was a single mother, had a lot of problems back home with her own family life and her children, but was very dedicated, very big contributor, I should say, in recruiting local police officers in Liberia. The story centers around her, but I also wrote something else. It's not. It is centered around her. So I love to write this story. This is a completely true story. I was honest while I was writing that. So it gave me a lot of pleasure as well. And I am more happier to see that story. The readers from the other side of the world will be able to read it. This book is not only for you know going through the journey we experienced. It is also important that the research work, for the purpose of the research work, it could be utilized. One addition, if I look at this book critically, then I have a point. One addition could be made in future edition, maybe, that if we could provide a statistical information from the beginning of the peacekeeping mission till today in a tabular format. So researcher can see which country, how many army officers, how many police officers, what are the missions, and maybe in remarks some other important points could be added, would benefit, would give benefit to the researchers. But readers will love to go through the journey. I'm sure that the true stories are so interesting for each of us. We are honest to write it down. It is we try to bring the story from the field, from the community, from our own experience, from our forces, and we believe that it will be very enjoyable. Untold stories will be known to you. That is what I believe. Uh, I definitely would love to have the book in a paperback. Maybe paperback would be a good option, and the circulation in Bangladesh of this book, I don't know. Maybe you can think about it. How best we can get the book quickly in Bangladesh. We want to read the book. I already have it in my hand, thanks to my friend who brought it from UK. But it's not available in Dhaka anyway. This is a wonderful experience to talk in this book launching ceremony. Excellency Bob Rai has given a wonderful lecture, and Mr. Harun Chaudhary sir, being the first peacekeeper, I'm so much impressed. You took an extra effort to make your contingent more vibrant. It's so wonderful. And Brigadier General Nazma Begum, Madam, I am so happy to hear from you. I haven't known you before, but happy to see that you are the first one who was the contingent commander in peacekeeping missions around the world. Congratulations. And Dr. Niloy and myself are known to each other many years. Also, I believe Professor Kausar Ahmed, we met somewhere in the military academy during our training. Thanks for that. Uh, I believe that this planet wants to see a very effective event to restore peace and tranquility. Let this small book contribute a little towards
Thank
striving that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a wonderful remarks from Muhammad Firoz Al Muzaid Khan. And as a member from Bangladesh Police, he has definitely contributed to world peace in a number of military missions. The audience, we have the last speaker lined up now. Omar, he's also a colleague of mine in University of Winnipeg, and as well as he's a part of our institute, and he's connected with me personally for a couple of years now. So he's a retired commander of Peruvian Marine Corps and a former United Nations peacekeeper. He's a defense and security specialist with extensive international experiences. Among other things, Omar has worked in a number of posts in Sudan, South Sudan, Haiti, Peru, Argentina, the United States, and of course, Canada. He lives permanently in Canada now with his family. And he has interacted with community leaders, senior government officials, foreign military and humanitarian officers from different organizations, nationally and internationally. It's a pleasure to welcome Omar to the session now, and we are going to intently listen about his experience and what he contributed in this humble effort of the book that we produced. Omar, go ahead, sir. Floor is yours.
Thank you, sir, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you and to have contributed with one chapter in this amazing book. Talking about peace in this increasingly polarized world is a challenge, and sometimes it can be dangerous. And that is one of the reasons why I accepted the idea to write a chapter in this book, because we are here for that, to face challenges, to serve others in need. I think we have, even though we come from different nationalities, we have that in common. Tonight and today, for the people who is watching us in Bangladesh, it happens that I'm the representative of Latin American here, coming from Peru. Actually, just to make a little bit of history, I had the privilege to meet Professor Kausar Ahmed, because one of his junior officers used to serve with me in Sudan back in 2007, and I'm still in touch with him. So that was the beginning of this story. Then I came to Canada, and I'm doing my studies in peace and conflict studies, and I'm also teaching at the University of Winnipeg. So moving on to the chapter in this book, my contribution is mainly focused on the idea of how we started from keeping peace, the traditional peacekeeping missions, where basically a military force was in the middle in these buffer zones, separating, two state forces back in the days, the classic peacekeeping missions that seems to be old-fashioned now. Then they moved to a more multinational I mean, kind of a multi-dimensional approach. And then we are now seeing hybrid missions, but all of them were moving and evolving at the same times that the conflict was evolving. So in my chapter, I do basically the analysis and the argument about how the UN peacekeeping system was not able to catch up with this evolution of the conflict, to was not able to chase and to adapt quickly to this change of geopolitics and geostrategy in the world. So since at the beginning we were looking for more interstate conflicts, and we already heard Mr. Ambassador Rob Rai about that. Now we see peacekeepers dealing with more interstate conflicts, and actually, in most of the cases, they are dealing even with organized crime, something that conventional militaries are not trained for. And we can see, unfortunately, that in the number of casualties of our troops. Back in 2010, I went to it was a business trip to Colombia, and one admiral recommended us to read a book. That book was called The Utility of Force by Rupert Smith, British general, former UN force commander. And he basically developed the concept of the war amongst people and how challenging is that for conventional warfare, military trained people to deal with. So those challenges are the challenges that we are facing today, and that is just part of the equation of this complex environment in our current peacekeeping missions. If we add corruption, if we add interests, if we add lack of training, if we add lack of leadership, and all these flows, then we can start seeing more clear why we have so many casualties on the ground. So in my chapter, I try to analyze that, and actually I also challenge and make a little critique about concepts like the responsibility to protect, for example, that sometimes it seems to be or mean nothing but a pure political coin, unfortunately. And finalizing my analysis about the history and the evolution of conflict and peacekeeping operations, I shared a couple of, actually 3 stories as a peacekeeper, because I was lucky. I used to be a military observer in Sudan. Then I was a contingent commander in Haiti, and then I had the privilege to work at the UN headquarters as a peacekeeper affairs officer. So I was able to see, and to feel and to taste, from the tactical up to the strategic level. And the stories that I share in my chapter are true stories that basically show that we can actually overcome those flows, those challenges, and actually we can do our part. Little, big, it doesn't matter. We people on the ground have the opportunity to actually make changes. And we don't need to make huge, big, astronomical changes in our tour of duties. We just need to do a little bit. Just to make smile one little kid is enough to pay off our mission. And in that way, we can contribute to peace in the world. So that is basically a summary of what is my chapter. And I really want to thanks again, Professor Kausar Ahmed, for having me in this amazing journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Omar. What a pleasure of having you beside us. Actually, Omar has contributed not a chapter, rather he collected others to write in this book. So I do deeply appreciate your help and support in this whole project. The audience, we are absolutely at the end of our session today. And before I formally close this session, let me once again go back to our speakers, those who are still with us from Bangladesh. Colonel Chaudhry, Delej Khan, my co-editor, Brigadier General Nazma Begum, who, despite of our very, very busy schedule, has made it eventually to speak to us, and also Mr. Firoz Al-Muzaid Khan, for giving us a perspective from police. And of course, Dr. Niloy left because he has a class. So having said so, the audience, let me very briefly say that before we conclude, we would like to pay our homage to the lost souls of Bangladesh Army, those who sacrificed their lives in a number of missions in the past. And not only Bangladesh, we do also pay homage to all the lives lost in keeping peace. If you remember, Honorable Bob Ray, who rightly mentioned that two of the conflicts are still going on in Middle East and in Kashmir. And in my chapter, this is what triggered me in analyzing 4 long-lasting missions, and if we need to revisit the mandates of those missions, which includes the mission that I participated, which is called MINURSO in Western Sahara. Dear audience, and having this last moment of this session, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our contributors, Cambridge Scholars Publishing House, and all of you here today. Your support and commitment to peace are invaluable. Together, let us carry forward the legacy of peacekeeping, inspired by nations like Canada and Bangladesh, and guided by the wisdom of leaders like Dag Hammarskjöld. With this, thank you very much. Stay well and stay safe. And please contribute to the world peace, because you are the hope, and everybody is looking at us, those who have served in the previous peacekeeping missions, to contribute to the just world. Thank you once again. Stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.